This episode of Bright Hearth is brought to you by Indigo Sundry Soap Company, Live Oak Integrative Health, Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial, A Well-Worn Story, Gray Toad Tallow, and by our supporters at patreon.com.
Envy begins by asking plausibly, why should I not enjoy what others enjoy? And it ends by demanding, why should others enjoy what I may not? Dorothy Sayers.
Pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man. We say people are proud of being rich or clever or good-looking, but they're not. They're proud of being richer or cleverer or better-looking than others. C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. Well, welcome back to Bright Hearth, everybody. You know what, actually, before I welcome everybody else back to Bright Hearth, Lexy, welcome back to Bright Hearth. You personally.
Was I gone?
We were both gone.
Were we?
We have a life between recordings.
Okay.
Actually, quite a bit of life
Yes,
between
we
recordings.
do.
So welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome back yourself.
And welcome back all of our faithful listeners to Bright Hearth. We're glad that you're here. And this episode, we have some words to say about envy.
Why did you bring this up in a series on truth, goodness, and beauty? I did forget to ask you that earlier.
Yeah, this one actually came to mind. I think it was from something to do with a sermon that I was preaching.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I think I was considering the way that envy relates to God's distribution of gifts and how God is not a communist and Christians are not communists, but that we not only have to believe that God distributes his gifts unequally, that some get 10 talents and some get 2 talents, but that we actually have to learn to love that, because if we don't love it, we're despising something that God did.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So, and what I started to realize was that this season, as we talk about truth, goodness, and beauty, and cultivating households that build and defend and radiate these things, truth, goodness, and beauty, that envy is kind of like one of these wellspring sins that makes war with all three.
Yeah, it can definitely halt the work in these areas if you start to plant those seeds of envy.
Yes,
sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Envy and jealousy and strife.
Yeah.
Even in James, and I think we'll talk about this in the episode, but in James 4, I believe it is, James basically says, what causes strife and quarrels and conflict?
Oh, that's, yeah.
Is it not that you desire and don't have, right? And he's thinking about, you look at others who have something and you want it and they don't. Envy, just in case you're like, I know kind of what envy is, but maybe you're struggling for the dictionary definition. We're talking about this feeling of resentment, jealousy, discontentment, and sinful longing that is brought about by somebody else's having something that you don't. And that can be a physical thing. It can be there's a spouse. It can be kids. It can also be a gift that they have or something they're good at or some sort of success that they have. There was a quote that I read in sort of pondering this topic, getting ready for it, and I thought it was just a tremendous quote. I think I found it in a Tim Challies article, which I hadn't stumbled upon anything by Tim Challies in a long, long time. But I was looking for a specific quote, and I didn't find it in the Tim Challies article, but I actually never found it. But I found this. He wrote, Sir John Gielgud summarized envy well in these despairing words, quote, when Sir Laurence Olivier played Hamlet in 1948 and the critics raved, I wept. And Sir John Gielgud, of course, was an actor who played the same roles before Sir Laurence Olivier. And so they raved and I wept. And it was like such an honest...
Yeah, it's a realist...
Like we all can identify
right there, yeah,
with that instinct, I think, that you see somebody else praised for something and the lizard of the flesh, it just rises up and it wants to just push that other person down. So I was thinking about this to answer your question a little bit more fully. I was thinking about this, like why this topic in truth, goodness, and beauty. And I was thinking about how envy makes war with truth. And truth is an antidote to envy, loving the truth, because truth confronts us with these just steel hard, granite hard facts of who it is that blesses Everybody that like all of the good and perfect gifts come down from the Father of lights. God is the one who blesses. When we're envious at somebody else, we're making war with truth. That goodness is an antidote to envy, that the virtuous man rejoices in the successes of others, even in obedience to, like you might think, well, where does that commanded in Scripture? Well, Romans 12:10. Rejoice with those who rejoice. We think a lot about the weep with those who weep thing, but rejoice with those who rejoice. And I didn't connect that to envy until today, thinking about how it is virtuous for us to look at somebody else rejoicing, our brother or our sister, and say, I'm so happy that like it's the exact opposite. I'm so happy that they're happy that I'm going to rejoice just because they're rejoicing. So goodness is the antidote. It's the opposite. It's the antithesis of envy. A virtuous man, virtuous woman rejoices in the rejoicing of others. Beauty despises envy, because envy looks at beauty outside of itself with hatred. Envy has an instinct to look at any beauty that is not the result of itself. You know, like anybody who's, think about a beautiful woman who is envious of the more beautiful woman.
Yeah.
She doesn't really love beauty. She loves herself, right? She hates beauty.
That's true, yeah.
You know, like a beautiful home. And it's the whole, I'm so happy that my friends got such a beautiful home, or that they have such a beautiful car, or such beautiful children. And, you know, you don't actually love beauty if you hate all beauty that you don't yourself possess.
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
So it just struck me that this was sort of one of those wellspring sins or temptations that we're all going to be tempted by. It's a destroyer of homes. It's a destroyer of friendships and marriages and businesses and churches. It is the thing, according to Matthew 27, that led the Jewish leaders to deliver Jesus to be crucified. It said, for he knew that for envy they had delivered him. I'm talking about Pilate. Pilate knew that the Jews had delivered Jesus to be crucified for envy. In the Old Testament, it was envy that led Joseph's brothers to give him up to the slavers. See this in Acts 7. The patriarchs moved with envy, sold Joseph into slavery or into Egypt, but God was with him. In Acts 13, during the ministry of Paul, the Jews are stirred up and filled with envy when they see the crowds gathering to hear from Paul instead of themselves. And so this is just one of those arch sins, and I thought it would be profitable for us to talk about it, sort of lay out some of the ways that envy infects homes and our own hearts and friendships and churches, so that we can get better at seeing it and crucifying it in ourselves first. But also envy is, once you understand the dynamics of envy, you begin to understand so many conflicts in the world around you and even within social circles, and you will become a wiser leader or even wiser understander of the times, if that makes sense. Before we continue with that, I do just want to say thank you guys for supporting the launch of our first book at New Christendom Press.
Oh, yeah.
So
How's that
incredibly. It's going really well. We've had last episode we told you about the first book we've ever published at New Christendom Press. Zachary Garris, pastor, he has a law degree and an MDiv. Pastor Zachary Garris, Honor Thy Fathers, Recovering the Anti-Feminist Theology of the Reformers. There's a link in the description of this show. You can go pick up we have a special deluxe hardcover, and I think we're on our way to being more than halfway sold out of it.
Cool.
Of this run. And I don't know if we're ever going to do another run of this deluxe hardcover edition that has all the gold foil stamping and dust jacket and that sort of thing. So go pick one up. We have actually a code for you. We're only selling it on our website right now, and the code is just all caps Bright Hearth, and you get 10% off. It's free shipping in the U.S., so go check that out if you haven't already. But thanks, guys. The day that our last episode dropped, when we told you all about it, it was like,
oh, really? Cool.
Like 100 or more, several hundred people went.
Bright Hearthers.
And
bookworms.
Picked it up. And I've been seeing you, put pictures up, put your favorite quotes, highlights from the book.
I think
good.
that book would make a great women's book group book.
Yeah, I think you're right. Why does that strike you? I think you're right.
Because it's not theology. I mean, it is theology, but it's not like a Bible study is what I'm trying to say. But I have found history books to be really, really good for women's book groups. Just a lot of easy conversation, lots of different rabbit holes you can go down, but it's also like obviously going to be sanctifying given the topic, you know? Although I would definitely caution you, given the content, make sure you are a strong personality if you're going to lead a book group like that, probably.
True. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it's a profitable book for anybody, layperson, pastor, or just someone who wants to understand the state of some of the subtle ways that feminism has affected our thinking and replaced the classically Reformed and Protestant ways of thinking about the family with counterfeits.
Yep.
Are you tired of not feeling well and of having your doctor treat your symptoms without taking the time to investigate what's really going on? Rebecca Belch owns Live Oak Integrative Health and is passionate about helping women and families achieve the health that God designed our bodies to have. She has been a critical care and labor and delivery nurse for 20 years and is a licensed practitioner of functional medicine. Her goal is to address the root causes of dysfunction in your body and to help you give your body what it needs so that you can create a legacy of health that extends to your children and grandchildren. She provides a wide range of testing options to uncover your underlying health issues, such as fatigue, weight gain, and gut problems. She then works with you to develop a plan that focuses on nutrition, hormone balance, and long-term habits to promote enduring health. She also specializes in health for women who will become or currently are pregnant. This time is often overlooked and is the most important window to create generational health. Contact her right now for a $50 discount on any of her service options. You can do this on her website, liveoakintegrativehealth.com, and that link will be in the description for you. If you have a young family like me, you work hard every day to ensure you care for your wife and kids. Providing for a young family is challenging, with rising costs, and it doesn't look like things are going to change in the future. Maybe you've thought like I have, I wish I'd started investing years ago. My family would be in a better financial position. As they say about trees, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Don't let the benefit of time go to waste on your financial planning for retirement or inheritance for your generations. Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial has been working with us to make the best plan for our family. He's a Christian who works with one of the largest and most trusted financial service companies in the world. He's been helping Lexi and I work towards our financial goals and helps us navigate the complexities of the markets. Whether you have millions in assets or you're just starting to invest, Joe Garrissey can help you reach your goals to grow the kingdom and leave a good legacy for your generations. Visit backwardsplanningfinancial.com, that's backwardsplanningfinancial.com, or call 615-767-2555 to speak with Joe to prepare for the future. The testimonials presented may not be representative of the experience of other clients and are not a guarantee of future performance or success. If you're like us, the changing seasons wreak havoc on your skin, leaving us in constant search of a healthy product that actually works. Well, they're onto something at Gray Toad Tallow. We're talking about a natural, organic option packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K to moisturize your skin. The minimal ingredients are whipped into a velvety balm and have been known to soothe all kinds of skincare needs, from psoriasis, eczema, and dry skin to sunburns. Speaking of sunburns, if you want to avoid sunburn altogether, we are excited to introduce their tallow-based sunscreen. Sunscreen that's actually good for your skin. They also heard from the men, and though all can use it, they did create a lighter scent using sandalwood. So check out graytoadtallow.com and use code BRIGHT15, that's all caps, BRIGHT15, for 15% off your order, and all of that will be in the description for you. All right, so let's talk about envy some more. And maybe the first question that I think it might be helpful to just start talking about this very practically and some of the ways that envy shows up and can start rearing its head. Because I think it's in the context of sort of case studies and real world application that it's often easiest to start understanding the dynamic of how envy works. Mm-hmm. So let's talk maybe about some ways that envy can rear its head in marriage. Is there anything that comes to mind first for you ways in marriage or for a husband or for a wife where envy can worm its way into the home and start to do
I was actually really
damage.
confused at first when I saw you put this on there. But then I started thinking about it and I was like, no, he is right. I think a woman can easily become envious of a man leaving on a regular basis, leaving the home on a regular basis. Because it can seem to her like he has the easy job. He gets to go to lunches with other people.
If your husband has business lunches.
Yeah.
This is so funny you mention it because this is literally something I've heard from like 10 different wives.
Really?
Over the years as a kind of confession, like, yeah, I learned, I knew my husband had a business lunch this week for his work, and I was so jealous. And they're actually being serious. They're like, no, I really was jealous.
It's because somebody else cooked them a meal, and they didn't get to. They had to cook the meal, and it was probably only PB&J.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
Like, especially as a man, everybody underestimates the glories and privileges of their own estate.
Yeah.
And they overestimate the glories and privileges of everybody else's estate.
Yes.
That's what sin does. It basically just it fills us with bitterness, and it makes us, instead of being thankful for all, like instead of a wife at home being like, I'm so thankful my husband works hard and I'm home and with the kids and I don't have to go to work like so many women whose husband just sent in work. And instead of being thankful, she's just stewing that he's at, the Olive Garden with the accounting department or something like that. And he's like at work some days just thinking, or in the commute, or something comes up and he has to work late and he's like, man, she's just at home and it must be so nice just to be, playing in the backyard with the kids. And everybody, our temptation too, it's funny, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, but I think our temptation when we start pointing at this tendency in ourselves is immediately to want to downplay the benefits and play up the difficulties of our work. So instead of admitting, like the husband admitting, yeah, that's a blessing. I get to go and have lunch at the Olive Garden with the account. Olive Garden's not that great, but whatever. Maybe even something better than that. Instead of just admitting, yeah, honey, you're right. That was nice. I know you were with the kids and you were probably cleaning dirt off of someone's face that was smeared on it by someone else. And, thank you. We kind of want to say, well, hang on, it's not all roses, They were really rude.
That's true, because we're still not being trained in thankfulness at that moment.
Yes.
That's a good point. Yeah, that makes sense.
And what we're doing is like, we're trying to play the misery Olympics.
Yeah.
That liberals do this too. The left does this. The oppression Olympics. The wife wants to immediately be like, the husband says, "Oh, it was hard. You don't understand. Yeah, I did get to do that business lunch, but it was super hard. We had layoffs and it was really stressful and work was difficult and I bet it was great." And she's like, "Whoa. Hang on. The kids were naughty. You never believe. You've never seen a naughtier kid than this kid today. He was just provoking everybody, and I would have rather been."
He sprayed painted all the herbs turquoise.
That did happen. What a champion. What a champion.
Anyways.
You're like, why did you do this, son?
I didn't. It wasn't me.
Covered in paint. Liar.
No, actually.
But we play the misery Olympics.
Yeah.
This is another aspect.
Pity biscuits.
The pity biscuits.
We feed on pity biscuits.
We say, feed me. But even if you go to 1 Corinthians 13, you start listening to Paul's description of love. Love is patient, it's kind. It doesn't envy.
Yeah.
It doesn't boast. It isn't proud. Like there's this aspect at the heart of love. In Galatians 5, Paul is talking about how saints ought to relate to one another. He says, let us not become conceited, like where we're thinking really highly of ourselves, proud and conceited. And what happens when you become conceited? Well, he says, let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other. And so conceitedness also then wants to incite envy in others.
Ooh, that's good.
And say, hey,
yeah,
look how great I have it. To Lewis's quote, we don't just want to be rich, we want to be richer.
Yeah.
This was in another insight. I think it was I think it might have been related to the Lewis section in Mere Christianity, or maybe something that Tim Challies had said in one of his articles. But we tend to envy people who are in the same sort of line of work that we are. Envy is like this sort of thing that actors envy other actors, politicians envy other more successful politicians, musicians envy other musicians. We're often most tempted to envy somebody who shares our vocation and think that they're more successful than me. They have a better, their husband's better, their kids are better, their house is better, they're more successful than me. And I thought that was a good insight, because it was like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't, when someone says, to a buddy mechanic at the church, like, man, what a good job you did repairing that transmission. Like, you were so good. You were so honest and on time and quick. I'm like, amen, great job, Bill, the mechanic. You nailed it. But you have to admit, there's something in the heart that rises up in the flesh. I'm a pastor. I preach all the time. If I'm in the company of other pastors and someone says, hey, Bill, you preached such a good sermon this week. That was an amazing sermon. Best sermon I've ever heard on the topic. And there's a part of you that the flesh, if we're honest, goes, yeah, well, my sermon was probably just as good. Why doesn't he like my sermon? Does he think Bill's better than me at preaching? There's just this kind of worm of envy. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. In marriage, one way would be downplaying the privileges of our estate and in magnifying the benefits of our partners, of your husband or your wife, and then deciding you're going to be envy.
I think it could probably be really hard for a husband or a wife, it might be different things, to have that spouse envying others' life circumstances. So then you're married to a really discontent spouse. That could really get in and wreck some good marriages.
Yeah. Expand. What do you give us?
Like a husband who, he's unwilling to lead his wife, but his wife is just super discontent. Either she wants to live somewhere else, she wants a bigger house, she wants more money, she doesn't want more kids, and now she has another on the way. Like, I just think there's a lot of areas that could go really badly where a wife is not purposefully pursuing contentment in where she is.
Yes. And you're right. Contentment is the opposite.
Yeah, and I don't know what that would look like for a husband necessarily. Maybe it could be a husband who is like a workaholic or something that really should be more content with a smaller business, but being with the kids more in the early years, but isn't.
Yeah.
I don't know what else it would look like necessarily.
I think for a man, I think the 10 Commandments point out some of the big ones.
Oh, that's true.
Because the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. Coveting is
you
envy.
Talked about this on Sunday.
Yeah, and you see this, what is the list of things that God provides in Exodus with the 10th commandment? Well, don't covet. And don't covet what specifically? Well, don't covet your neighbor's stuff. Don't covet your neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
So for a man, envy can very easily become financial, where a husband is envying the financial success of his brother or of another man. This is so easy to fall into when you see someone else in the church. I think of in our church there are some really productive guys. There are some guys who have developed skills in areas of business that I can only dream about, like that I'm just probably never could achieve what some of these men that I know have achieved in business, and in some cases not just one business. Like I know men who have succeeded fabulously in like 2 to 3 or 4. Almost it seems like everything they touch is just multiplied, and the Lord blesses, and they have that Midas, everything turns to gold that they touch. And, they're doing well. The real estate portfolio, the business portfolio, it's going amazingly. And I think, especially for a man, there's ways a woman looks at that man's family, and I think she envies differently. Yeah. But the man envies not just the material thing, but also the renown and the glory of the success. And he feels in his heart that, wow, why does he get all of that? Lord, why did you give him, let's say, $50 million of success? And if I could just have one of those millions, I could do,
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
Yeah, Pastor Toby pointed that out. I think it was maybe when he was preaching at our church last year, where he was saying, like, you're stuck in envy where you're telling yourself what you would do with that person's.
Yeah.
Like how you would be more faithful than they're being with
Oh,
that
that's
house.
so true.
Or
If
with
I
that
had
money
that.
or that.
Oh, if I had that money, I'd be so much more generous than them. For example, I'd give it to me. I'd give it to someone like me. And you're like, you're just pretending that we're giving you a lot of money. You absolute liar,
Yeah. I thought it was just really good and it stuck with me.
That is really good. The other one he lists for husbands is coveting your neighbor's wife. So sexual sin is often a form of envy.
I was thinking about, I guess that is what you're boiling it down to. I've just never heard it put that bluntly as you put it in the sermon on Sunday.
I think about the way that in the normal course of life, what are the temptations of different stages of life to maybe as a man and his wife, they grow old together, and there's the normal, his wife is having children, and maybe she puts on some weight in the course of that, and or maybe, this can happen in the young years too. She has kids and maybe she puts on a little bit of weight, and it's, it's been postpartum, and he looks over and sees, the 20-year-old guy that just got married, and there's a temptation there for him to lust, and that is a type of envy where he's saying basically, I want that thing that's not mine, it's somebody else's, that does not belong to me.
Yeah.
And he can feel a temptation there. I think that what you see is that the envy is always going to run along the track of desire. It's a desire itself is not bad. In James, when James is talking about desire and envy, he says that you have not because you ask not, or you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. So you quarrel because you want and you don't have, and you don't have because you don't ask, and you don't or you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. Desiring something in itself is not bad. God made us to desire things, but when our loves are disordered, we tend to twist the innate desires God has put into us as men and as women, and then the envy runs along the track of that twisted desire. So the woman desires comfort and security and cherishing, and a husband who will protect and love her and provide for her and children and all these good things. And the twisting of that desire into envy becomes minimizing all the blessings of her own husband and her own house and her own children, and then looking at the other person, the other woman who seems to have more. For the man, it runs along the same good desire to win the affection of a woman. Sexual desire is good. The desire to achieve and to make money is good so that he can provide well. But again, the sin twists it. Homo incurvatus in se, as Augustine puts it in the City of God. The man curved in on himself. So it curves all of that good desire, instead of being turned upward and outward, true, straight, in righteousness, that desire becomes curved inward.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about how envy isn't productive, like because of what you said about the desire itself is not wrong. It's what are you doing with it? Are you using it sinfully, or are you using it lawfully in a way that could better your circumstances? Because I think that's one thing that can happen with envy is you can look at something and also forget that God is a God of means. So maybe the reason the person, like the guy, your example of somebody who's been financially, successful, you're forgetting though that maybe the means God chose to use was actually his hard, diligent work in studying how to get there and being self-controlled and having good financial habits and giving him parents who taught him well to use his finances. Like, you're forgetting all of those other things along the way that were the means to get there that you could also implement. But instead you're envious, and it's actually the opposite of being productive with your circumstances. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so instead of being righteous and just saying, well, I may be a 2-talent guy to that 10-talent guy, but I can still go and imitate all of the virtues.
Yeah.
I can still go do all the same things and ask for the Lord to bless. And even there was something in Ephesians this week in the sermon that I preached related to working hard, basically where Paul he's giving this list in Ephesians 4 through the first couple verses of Ephesians 5 on basically what it would look like to be this new humanity that Christ is creating through his blood, that the Father's building in the image of his Son. And he gives all these examples. They're very practical. Like, okay, you're Christians, and so you need to stop lying. Like all the pagans lie all the time. You're going to stop lying, and you're going to speak the truth to one another in love. One of the things he says is, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, like work hard with your hands. And the reason he gives for that command is really interesting. It would be lawful to work hard with your hands to provide for yourself. Totally. In fact, you should do that. Take care of, yourself, your family. Of course, you need to do that. Otherwise, you deny the faith and you're worse than an unbeliever. But he actually jumps right past that and he says, labor diligently like this so that you may have something to share with anybody who is in need. And so it brings back to that James point that one of the ways that we crucify envy is you have to take hold of this snaky desire to be God and have everything and everything bends to you and everything worships you and you get everything and people sacrifice to you and bend it outward and in love genuinely cultivate a desire that other people would succeed.
Yes.
And begin to use the things that you have to love others, and not just in talk, but in deed. With your things and with your blessings, build up and bless somebody else's house, some other saint.
Yeah, and when you're being thankful, thankfulness causes motivation to get to work where you are.
Yeah.
Instead of being envious of other people having it easier or what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, I don't remember.
It's late, babe. It's past 8 p.m.
Envious or I don't remember what it was.
But you looked really cute for getting it.
Thank you.
I got you.
Never mind.
Let me ask you this. So,
okay.
How does envy show up in female groups? Let's unpack that a little bit. What are some ways that you can see envy arising within friend groups of women or whatever, committees of women, whatever? What do you call a group of women? A flock?
I don't even
know. A ball?
A what?
A ball?
A ball of women?
like a dancing ball.
No.
A Senate?
I don't think so.
A Congress?
I don't know.
You shouldn't, because that'd be feminist.
I think there is holy ambition that I see around our women at church a lot. I have two different things I want to say.
Okay.
Don't let me forget to talk about gifting. I want to talk about that at some point, but
I won't let you forget to talk about gifting.
Because that's what I was thinking with holy ambition and gifting. But I do want to address first, I've seen this go wrongly in the past a lot where people mistake, a woman might look at somebody else's house, they're coming over for dinner and they see that it's nice and picked up and there's candles on the table and, dinner's on time, stuff like that. And they might just kind of be like, well, she just has it easy. That's probably why she was able to make it look nice and get dinner on time. Me over here, laundry's everywhere. And
her kids are probably so obedient.
Costco pizza, And the envy might blind them to see, actually, she was working hard today. She was getting up before the sun. She was disciplining her kids. That's why they're well behaved, so that she could get dinner done on time. We can't see the actual grace that God has poured out in the person to give them self-control and self-discipline to do those things so that the blessings come along with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what it is they're actually excusing themselves.
Yes, it's a lack of taking responsibility.
They're saying anybody could have done all of that. I could have done all that if I had all of the easy things that she has.
I think part of it is envy, though. I think there's another part of it that what I see specifically with women is it paralyzes them instead of okay, maybe I should go ask her how she did that, get some advice. It becomes almost it feels shameful to them, I guess, maybe an embarrassment sort of a thing. And I think some of this is because we are so, well, as a culture as a whole is what I'm saying. We are incompetent when it comes to the domestic arts nowadays. And so a lot of women can become embarrassed by it. I don't see this now. I used to see this a lot in the past, and they'd be like, well, either you're legalistic that you're trying to say that, or because they just don't want to humble themselves and ask, or maybe they even genuinely believe that. And really the person is just like, actually, I just really love my grandma's blueberry muffins. I'm not saying you have to feed them to your kids every Tuesday morning, though. You know?
Yeah. Envy in that sense is a kind of, what it's saying is, I should already have all of those things without doing any of the effort.
Yes.
I deserve all of those things, the well-behaved kids,
Yeah.
the biscuits on the table.
Yeah.
You know, the candles on whatever.
And what happens when you realize, like, no, my friend worked hard to get to this point is, at least for me, it's helped normalize the work so I don't complain about it.
Yeah.
Missy talked about this in her book, Simplified Organization, where she was had always been at a friend's house around dinner time, and it was always nice and tidy, and she just thought that's how the house was all the time. And she like popped over to drop something off one time, and the friend said, I left the door unlocked. You can just, leave it inside. And she walked in. It was just like a normal house at 10 a.m. or something, which is probably just kind of messy. And it really dawned on her. She was like, oh, she actually does work to get to that point at the end of her day. And maybe I should work a little harder too. Yeah, and I really liked that she used that example, because I think us ladies kind of always have that moment where we walk into a friend's house and we're like, you too?
Yeah. You go over to the guy's house, and he's got a super nice lawn and everything's all great, and you're like, man, I wish I could just buy a house with a nice lawn like this.
Yeah.
And little do you know, like, he's been out there
working
an hour a day all summer.
The other
sweating.
thing I did want to say was maybe the opposite of envy being thankfulness. I said giftings, and what was the other word I used? Man, guys.
Gifting is the one I was told to remind
I know,
you
but
of.
what was there was another word with it? Oh,
I don't recall another word. You didn't tell me to remind you about another word, unless you did and I forgot. And then I need you to remind me of the thing I was supposed to remind you of.
Okay, I think when you're holy ambition is what I was saying. Okay, I think when you have a really robust, impressive group of ladies that are not envious of one another, but are highly ambitious, it allows us to admit our individual giftings in a way that allows for more, not groupthink. What is the other word? Where you work better together as a group than if you had worked on your own.
Teamwork, synergy.
Synergy, there you go.
We're using business buzzwords.
So, because you've talked about this a lot, and then Headmaster Kevin and I were having a conversation this past week, and he was like, no, I think you are good at this, and in your season of life, this is probably the best way you can serve the school. And he was explaining to me, and I was like, okay, I'm thankful that we live in a group of people where our feelings aren't hurt by saying, like, you're good at this, you're not good at that. And I told him, I said, you know what? Go talk to Brian. I know Brian will be honest with you. Ask him what his thoughts are on where I should be serving. Because we know that we're just going to function better if we're all in our best. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes envy can almost make us fake what we're good at, which makes everything worse. And I think it's because it's like, what do you want to do? Level playing field, equality. It's we want equality among everybody, and especially among women. Yeah. We don't want to admit maybe your friend's actually better at baking than you are, Yeah. And
it happens.
And again, go ask her about it. Yeah. Let there be holy ambition there.
Maybe she can teach you how to, there's like all sorts of things that she might be able to share her gift, but maybe even after she teaches you.
But you have to
she'll still be better at you at that than
past the envy part of it.
Yeah.
You have to get past that and instead be thankful. Like, I'm so grateful I'm in this community where everybody is really good at a bunch of different things. Totally. And you've talked about that a lot with leadership stuff at the church. Like, just once like elders are willing to admit what they're good at and not good at, everything functions better. Feelings don't get hurt as much. You can laugh at one another's quirks, But if there's envy underneath that, it's just like a mild annoyance all of the time. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I do think that a lot of conflict is actually just the external iceberg above the water of conflict that you see is often a lie, because the conflict is often not about the thing you see. I think Pastor Douglas Wilson talks about this, or it's like, I think I'm getting this Douglas Wilson via Rene Girard.
Okay.
Which Girard talks a lot about mimetic. People are mimetic.
Oh, yeah.
And our desires are mimetic. We want to, mimetic just means imitational. So we want to imitate what we see all the time. So let's say that you want to be like the thing you admire and you look to in the person, and you see, like, maybe there's a guy and he's really, I'm thinking of like the way men operate. He's really strong and maybe he's got a lot of gravitas and people respect him naturally. And people don't respect you as naturally, it seems to you. And so you look at him and you meme him. You like want to imitate that guy, but then you find that you're not actually that guy.
Yeah.
And so then you're envious of him. And and then what you admired, you begin to hate, because you're like, he doesn't deserve, I'm doing the same thing and I'm not getting it. He must be a fake. He must be a fraud. A lot of conflict, the visible conflict, is actually there's sublimated other things going on under the surface, that what's visible is just an excuse. So in a conflict, let's say amongst business partners, there's a conflict over decision X.
Okay.
And they're like, I think we should do this with the business, and the other person says, I think we should do that with the business. And then there's some conflict or something. A lot of the time, the conflict has very little to do with decision X. It actually has to do with annoyances from a year ago, or envies under the surface, or rivalries, or selfish ambition, or some other sinful motive that's playing out. And the external excuse for the conflict is just that. It's an excuse. It's a puppet. And so Pastor Wilson, I think when he talks about this, if I'm not remembering incorrectly, he talks about identifying those sort of things, kind of envy operating, by seeing conflict that makes no sense whatsoever.
Okay.
When people are like fighting, and that you ask them why they're fighting, and they explain it, and it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it does kind of the one or two examples where envy was highly involved. I like it does kind of get irrational.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like a little baby where you're taking an ice cream cone away from them or something, and it's just frantic flailing, but at an adult level.
Yeah. Well, when you look at a conflict and you're like, what is the origin of this conflict? And this can be helpful, like to start to understand these patterns. If you're mediating conflict, or you're involved in conflict yourself, or you're a pastor or something, something like that, or you're mediating conflict between kids, and it's literally across the board. Like, where did this come from? And in James, he talks about this. Where do conflicts come from? It is desire. It's this warped, selfish desire, where I don't want blessing for them. I want it for me. And even when I ask God to be blessed, I'm asking wrongly, because I want it for me. I don't want it to serve anybody else. I want it all for me. And so much conflict comes back to this touch point of envy being sublimated into other conflicts and other external behaviors, external fights. But really what's under the surface is envy. It's like a lot of the time you see this in male groups, when somebody is really successful at something, and you go, or they're really gifted at something, some other people in the group resent it. Not because of any righteous motive, not because they're really, like, they might start concern trolling, brother, I think you might be really struggling with pride. I think, they
That's
might...
usually like a tip off of that person's envious.
Yeah, they start taking the person who's really gifted aside and saying, brother, I'm just really concerned that you're consumed with arrogance. And the guy might, if he's a good man, he might say, of course, pride is something we all have to deal with, and that's a good word. I'll keep an eye out for that. And he says, no, brother, you don't understand how deep it goes. You're so consumed with pride about this thing. What he's doing is he's just envious. The accuser is envious, and he's just projecting onto the other guy. There's no way he could just be really good at that and humble, and that, like, maybe he's preaching or doing the thing you want to do because you want to do it, and so and you're not getting to do it. Therefore, anybody who's doing it is illegitimate.
Yes, we do. Envy does not allow us to see God's grace in other people, because it makes us want to just highlight, again, like what Pastor Toby said, all the bad things about them. Well, they're
That's
not
right.
using it the way I would. I would do it this way. I would do it better than, like, all that.
Here at Bright Hearth, we're all about helping you not turn into a girl if you're a boy, or into a boy if you're a girl. You know what might be doing that to you? The soap in your shower. And so we are pleased to introduce you to IndigoSundrySoap.com, link in the description, of course, who can provide you with soaps and more without any of the nasty stuff. And because they love you, they're giving you a discount code, guys. So use code, all caps, Bright Hearth, for 10% off your whole order. Support this great Christian company and support Bright Hearth Podcast at the same time. Check them out at IndigoSundrySoap.com. And of course, that link is in the description. Here at Bright Hearth, we love to support Christian family businesses that are doing great work, which is why we're so happy to commend to you A Well-Worn Story. A Well-Worn Story is a sewing studio based in New Glarus, Wisconsin, and they're making handcrafted leather and canvas goods. It's run by a husband and wife team, and they focus on making beautiful products from natural, high-quality materials that only get better with age, telling your unique story. Made in rural America, this Christian family business makes high-quality handcrafted leather and canvas bags, belts, and wallets, and these are heirloom quality, stuff that you can hand down to your next generation. You can order online at www.awellwornstory.com and use the discount code BRIGHTHEARTH, all caps, no spaces, to save 10% on any order. So the externals are often just sublimated envy that's popping up in other areas. I think we might have talked about this passage before, but it's one of those passages, once you see it, you're like, wow, that explains a lot. Envy is the bad eye that Jesus is talking about.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening.
In the parable of the workers who arrive at different times of the day, and, you know, the master of the vineyard he says, work for a denarius, okay, in the morning. And then the guy comes at noon, he's like, no one's hired you yet. Come, okay, I'll give you a denarius if you work for the rest of the day, or I'll come hire you. And then at 4:30, 30 minutes before quitting time, he goes out and he says, no one's hired you? Well, come work the last 30 minutes on my vineyard. And when they line up to get paid, the 30-minute guy gets paid first, and he gets, lo and behold, he gets a whole denarius. He gets a whole day's labor for wage for 30 minutes of work. And the rest of the people in the line are thinking, we've struck it rich. If he's given 1 denarius for 30 minutes, and then they start doing the math and how much they're going to get. And it's like by the time they get to the line, and then they're like, wait, and he gives a denarius to the 4-hour guy, and then he gives the denarius to the 8-hour guy. And the 8-hour guy who agreed to work for a denarius is up in arms. He's like, this is unjust. He's starting an inquest. He's lodging a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. And the master's reply is really telling. He says, do you begrudge me? It's often translated something like, do you begrudge me because I'm generous with my own things? But what it literally says, like the literal translation of the phrase, and it's kind of a Hebraism, is, do you have a bad eye because I'm good, basically? Like, is your eye bad because I'm good? And it literally, the bad eye is someone who looks on God blessing someone else and hates it because they're not getting it.
Yeah.
They hate it. So in female groups, we've talked a lot about male groups too, but I mean, in female groups, that can definitely be a...
Oh, yeah. Can be like skills, body type, husbands, marriages, well-behaved kids. Heck, it could be like lack of wrinkles. It could be, I don't know, somebody's clothing closet. Somebody has cool barefoot shoes that you don't have. Let's be real about our people.
Sinful. We're so sinful.
Well, when you put it that practically, it's real though, and it's...
Yes. Yeah. It's so silly. And you can see it in your own heart when you start making excuses for why that glory and blessing they got was so easy for them and they don't really deserve it. And why you're so much more deserving than them of that blessing. It's like, have you ever heard a 3-year-old explain, you're handing cookies out at dessert, and they're convinced that the 6-year-old big brother, got a bigger cookie than them. And you start asking, they start doing the inquest. They're like, why? They got a bigger cookie than me. That cookie's huger than mine. And you start asking them. And at the bottom, if you've gone down this route with a toddler, and you just ask them, well, why do you deserve the biggest cookie? What if they got what if it's a bigger cookie?
It was just owed to them.
What is it to you if I give a
deserve
bigger
that.
cookie to your brother?
You didn't know these cookies existed 60 seconds ago.
Did you do anything to earn this cookie for good or for evil?
That's the funny part about envy is like one day we're going along totally fine. And then out of nowhere, something can just incite this. Yeah, it's funny how we are. We are sinful.
And often what we're believing is this lie of the fixed pie of glory.
Yes.
That you look at the glory that someone else is getting, or the glory of this, the children or the spouse or whatever it is, and you're thinking, if this is a communist way of thinking, if they get this piece of cookie or pie, that only leaves so much pie left in the tin.
Mm-hmm.
So if they get a lot, that means I'm going to get less. And you start doing this math. And you actually have to realize that that's not how glory works.
No.
Because God is infinitely glorious. He gives all good things. And there's no fixed pie of honor and glory. And God can bless
infinite amounts, you guys. Infinite amounts.
He can bless your home. He can bless the socks off of your home and bless the socks off of your friends' homes.
Yes.
At the same time. He doesn't just have to pick one.
And the cool thing to me is when you start to see that and believe that, you start to see how God has really personalized the blessings in your life.
So true.
In a way that it's just like, it just makes sense. I think this is also why the verse, I think it's 1 Thessalonians, about praying all times with prayer
and supplication.
Isn't it
Prayer and
Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving? Yeah, you're
prayer
right.
and Thanksgiving. I think this is why Thanksgiving is commanded of us at all times, because it's like an armor against envy if you're being constantly thankful.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest, getting practical here. How do we fight envy when we notice it? Thankfulness.
Yeah, thankfulness. And being really specific about it. Like, if you really are in a season where you're struggling, I remember Eric telling us this at, what's it called? A charge one Sunday, about like waking up the next day if you're really struggling to write 3 things every morning that you're thankful for. And just like really having to do that. If that muscle isn't there, what are some ways you can cultivate it? Or, you know, asking everyone around the dinner table what's something they're thankful for that night, or asking your spouse.
What this does when you start to list things you're actually like, I'm thankful for, I'm healthy.
Yep.
Wow, like some people are wasting away with cancer and I'm healthy. Oh, I have kids. This person just had a miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
I have a house. You start doing this, and if you combine this with interrogating what you're owed, you start to realize how every single thing you have, you were not owed. And you think like, I worked hard for all the things, and that's true. Reaping and sowing is true, and God does call us to work diligently, and he does reward our labors. That's all true. But no matter what, if you follow it all the way back up, the chain of resources, you'll discover that everything you have, you didn't earn. Because you may have worked hard, but with what strength did you work hard? Well, with strength that God gave you. And you worked hard in your business, and your business produced some computer chip. Well, who made the silicon in that chip in the ground, and the metals? Who put them all there for you to find? God did. Who gives you the breath every day in your lungs? Oh, God did that. But I was very smart, and I was cunning, and I was intellect. I worked, used my, who gave you the intellect? Who gave you the cunning? God gave you all of that. That was all God. You didn't earn any of that. You didn't go get that for yourself. You exist in a world God made. You are a contingent being, all the way up and all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it actually crucifies, for the highly successful, it brings you down to earth and says, yeah, I am successful with all these things God gave me.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the one who's struggling, you also still find, and yet even in this difficulty, like when Paul talks about learning how to abound and how to lack, even in your lack, you're like, but I exist.
Yeah, literally.
God is for
As
me.
simple as that.
Job sitting there scraping his boils with potsherds was still blessed by God more than Job deserved.
I think one of the practical things I've heard a lot of women say is like getting off of social media.
Yeah, if
Or
you struggle with envy.
Yeah, or like maybe it's not social media, maybe it's your consumption to production ratio. Like I know if I'm consuming too much stuff, be it social media, books, design magazines, but I'm not actually spending any time putting it into practice, I can become more discontent because I'm seeing more and more and more and more that I would like to be doing.
Yes.
And I'm never actually putting it into practice. There's actually a huge satisfaction in getting to work in producing something in your life.
Yes. Envy is the enemy of the good, true, and beautiful because it seeks to win glory by lowering everyone and everything else rather than making something true, good, and beautiful to contribute to the world God is making through many hands itself.
Yeah.
So it says, so when you're looking at all these things other people are doing all the time, that's a great point. The instinct of envy is like, I deserve all of that, the fruit of that. Instead, you should put that down and go do something beautiful, or do something true, or cultivate some virtue, and contribute to this big tapestry that God is weaving with all of His people.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to lop everybody out, this is like equality of outcome. Communism and socialism looks at leftism, in general, looks at any inequality of outcome, and it says there must be some sort of tipping of the scales or racism or something like. And it's silly because they would never do it with something like the NBA. They'd never be like, the fact that white people are underrepresented in the NBA, they must be racist against white people. Like, no, black people are better at basketball than white people per capita.
Or even just like the wage inequality.
Yeah,
there's so many other questions they're not asking.
Men and women choose different professions and work different numbers of hours for different motives, right? But envy and this communism is institutionalized envy. It basically says we're going to by law mandate that everybody achieve the same amount in every area. And it's the dumbest idea.
It's so silly.
It's like legislating that the world would be flat and level. No mountains and valleys anymore. Everything has to be flat. And God is like, no, I made mountains and they're great. I made valleys and they're great. Rivers are great. I made it all. It's all different. It's doing what I made it to do. So one of the answers to envy is to do what God made you to do.
Yeah.
Be gloriously you.
Yes.
Be sanctified you.
Yep.
Be content. Be thankful. Confess it. If you find that you've been really envious and cranky at everybody, you need to go confess it. Hey, brother, I'm sorry. I've been picking fights with you for 6 months because I'm envious of you. Sister, I've been just totally fuming at you, and I don't know why, and everything you do annoys me. And I just realized it's because you're better than me at this thing. And I was insecure, so please forgive me. Because people know. People see the sublimated the conflict,
do know. Yep.
but they might not recognize where it's coming from. And you have to realize the position you're putting other people in when you're envious and sinning in this way, because what are they supposed to do? Be like, well, you just envy me.
Yeah.
That sounds so proud. It's one of the hardest sins to rebuke. Because
but what if it isn't?
Because a lot of the time, people how arrogant does it sound like to go and be like, you're just
exactly,
brother, you're so
arrogant. It's almost
arrogant.
like a Jesus Jew.
You envy my gifting,
yeah,
my
exactly.
anointing. And so better that
funny.
you would just confess it. And we all have to confess that we have envy. I think another discipline, and probably the last one that comes to mind for me, at least in this episode, is just in fighting envy, fight the positive, not just the negative. Fight for the positive, not just against the negative. So don't just fight envy, but actually make yourself rejoice when you see somebody succeeding.
Yeah.
And as much as it hurts, especially in an area that you want to succeed in.
And pray and ask God to bless that in them, for them.
Yeah, this is like a constant battle and discipline in my own heart. As you look out and you say, it's one of the things that I've tried to make myself literally stop anytime I see somebody else doing something in the same world that I'm doing in any given area, and say, Lord, please bless them.
Mm-hmm.
Please make them successful, make us all together successful, and, help your people to win and be blessed and prosper. And it's a constant rebuke because it reminds us that the point is that the people of God would prosper,
Yes,
not just the
that's what I
person
like
of
about
God.
that. Yeah, the one individual.
Yeah, not just the
It's
person.
so selfish when you
I know. When you see it in the kids are the best. It should just, you see the bad eye in real time at like the dessert table or something. It's so funny. It's evil, it's wicked, and you got to discipline it. It's one of those things you have to try not to laugh
the person of God. That's really funny.
Yeah, you got to try not to laugh at it, but it definitely does. Well, guys, we've got kiddos coming in the room. They're invading the Bright Hearth studio space. And so we're going to sign off here at this point and just say thank you for listening to this episode of Bright Hearth. Pick up Zach Garris's book. Guys, I know it's early, but we do have tickets available for our next year's New Christendom Press. The 2025 New Christendom Press conference tickets are available. If you just go to newchristendompress.com, in the menu, there's a Conference 2025 button. You can go and select tickets. We're going to be announcing our speakers for that conference, Lord willing, by around Christmas time. But this is going to be the best pricing that you'll get for the conference. It's a huge discount for signing up early because that helps us plan the venue and know where we're going to be, what logistics we're going to need, how many folks to welcome. We'd love to have you and your whole family. Again, it is we've worked to make this a very affordable conference in terms of our ticket pricing for whole families to come together. And so we hope to see just lots of you there and to give you a taste of Ogden hospitality and welcome you here to our community. But in the meantime, guys, make war with envy wherever you see it. Envy is an enemy of the good, true, and beautiful. And so as God's people, we must be the enemies of envy everywhere we see it. So be content, be thankful, and we'll see you next time on Bright Hearth.